Hello again, my friends. Onward and upward. Again, you're doing a good job with your essays, but I want to stress if you ever have a problem with a topic, please contact me. You have my home or my cell phone number, you have my text number, you have my email address. So contact me because with the last topic, a couple of you had some problems figuring out what to say, and and so contact me. We can talk about it. Okay. I can offer you suggestions as to how to attack a topic and everything. So always feel free to get in touch with me. That's never a problem. Okay, I've told you from the beginning, I'm here for you, and that's the way it is. I'm here for you. Okay, that's why I do this stuff, because I so enjoy the opportunity to be in class with you. Now I know we're supposed to be in the classroom this semester, but this is one of those years. No, I think I mentioned in another video about wearing a mask sometimes just so we could make it seem like we're really in class, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, so anyway, essays, not in general, except for the one or two people that had some problems this week. They were all really quite good. Comments are so interesting. Again, you're bouncing back and forth between each other, and that's just the best, so that you're actually creating something of a class setting by doing that. It's really neat. It's really, you're doing a great job. And I love the fact that sometimes you really disagree with each other. Sometimes you just say, yes, what you wrote was very similar to the ideas I had. So, that's neat. And many of you are using real specifics in your comments. Here's what I liked about your comment. You said this, and this. Great job. Okay. Today we want to move on to another topic. Now it's important for you to realize that all of these topics are interrelated. Okay. So we've talked about irony. We've talked about plot development. We've talked about character development. What else? So we've talked about a bunch of different things so far this semester. And they all work together to help frame fiction, okay? Today we want to talk about setting. And setting is also a big part of what fiction is all about. It's really important for you to understand that setting is a whole combination of things, okay? And again, it works together with all of these other things that we've talked about, character development and whatever, irony and plot, and we'll be going on to theme, and we'll be going on to lots more stuff. But it's important for you to understand. Naturally, there's a telephone right behind me, and it has to ring while I'm doing this, and my wife is drying her hair, so she probably won't even hear the phone ringing, so be it. Anyway, okay, so setting is a whole combination of things all unto itself. And it's important for you to think of setting in terms of a whole bunch of things put together. Normally, when we think of setting, we only think of place, okay? But setting is a whole lot more. I always have a little runny nose. Than just place, okay? Setting involves a lot of things. Now, place is certainly a part of setting, okay? So, in A Rose for Emily, for instance, we saw a story that was set in the South. So the setting thing was different than something that might be set in Western New York, okay? But time period is also a part of setting, okay? Now, when we talked about A Rose for Emily, and I hate to hit upon that story, but it's one that we had a lot of conversation about, and all of you read it. So when we talked about A Rose for Emily, when you wrote about it, A lot of you made comments like, why didn't somebody get her some psychological help? Part of the setting in that story is that it took place 100 or so years ago, okay? 125 years ago, maybe, when, number one, there weren't many psychological services out there. There were basically none, okay? Number two, Emily was a woman, and so the role of women in that world was significantly smaller than the role of women today, okay? So you can't think about something like that in terms of today's world because it wasn't written in today's world. It wasn't referring to today's world. So, in setting, you have to take into account place. You have to take into account time period, okay? Setting also involves more than just place and time period. But again, those two are really, really critical, okay? You also have to involve the culture of the time of when something took place and the culture in general of when something took place. What do I mean by culture? Okay, let's just look at the city of Buffalo, okay? In a typical summer, now not this summer because this summer certainly wasn't a typical summer, but in a typical summer, we have a festival that takes place on kind of like the west side, okay? And it's called the Italian Heritage Festival. Now, I think last year they may have moved it to the waterfront just to make more use of the waterfront and also not to cut down, try to avoid being, like cutting down on where they had to have police protection because so much traffic was being involved. But for years we had the Italian Heritage Festival on the west side, okay? What would happen if you had that in South Buffalo? Well, in South Buffalo, for instance, we have the St. Patrick's Day Parade. There's a separate St. Patrick's Day Parade in South Buffalo. Besides the big one on Main Street in Buffalo, South Buffalo has its own. Because South Buffalo, it traditionally was predominantly Irish, where the West Side was predominantly Italian, and now is predominantly Italian and Hispanic, okay? Now, again, things have changed, but that's kind of the way it used to be. And the old East Side was predominantly German. Okay. So anyway, we have those different kinds of festivals. And at Delaware and Utica in the city of Buffalo, there is a Greek Orthodox church, and they have a Greek festival in June every year. Okay? They celebrate the Greek traditions there. Could you have that festival in South Buffalo or on the west side? Probably not, because you're not surrounded by a community that supports those ethnic traditions. Okay? That's all part of setting, ethnic traditions. Okay? Okay, weather. Weather is certainly part of setting. Okay? Why is weather part of setting? Well, okay, let's say you want to talk about doing something on the shores of Lake Erie in Buffalo, okay? Would you have the same story in January as you have in July? I think not, okay? In July, what's going on the shores of Lake Erie in a typical year is swimming and partying on the beach and that kind of thing. In January, not much is going on the shores, right? And, if you got a little bit of warm weather, then we get cold weather, you get these things where the water blows up over the road and we get all this ice, and probably all of you have seen pictures of cars that were completely engulfed in ice because the water was blown from the lake over. So you can see how weather is important, and even weather at a particular place at a particular time. So, a rainy day in July in Buffalo is not going to be the same on the beach as a sunny day in July in Buffalo, okay? So we get weather, we get time of the year, we get time period, you know. If we went back to 1890 and talked about some kind of a festival in Buffalo, because Buffalo is what we know, it would be dramatically different from a festival now, okay? Because in 1890, we didn't have electricity, you know, so dramatically different, okay? So all of these things help make up the whole concept of setting. Setting is a whole bunch of things put together, not just place, time, time period, ethnicity, weather, you know, time of the year, developments in the world, okay? So, as you are reading this week, the stories that we have, keep in mind that you can't judge these stories from 2020, okay? You have to judge them from the time period that they're set in. Now, in the story in F, keep in mind that that story is set in the early 20th century. Well, no, the story isn't set in the early 20th century, but what they're referring to in there, where Princeps shot the prince and the prince's wife and killed them both, and that's important because that's the spark that, in a sense, brought about the very beginning of World War I. It was coming anyway. There was a lot of world tension, but then this murder of the prince and his wife really was the straw that broke the camel's back and got things going. So realizing that as part of the time period is important. And you know, you might want to just read a paragraph or two about that, you know, so that you understand what's going on, what that female student is referring to with her professor, okay? So you know, that makes the setting all that much more important because the story is set in the city where that actually took place. And the rain is pretty important in that story, and I'm not going to go into detail. You can figure that one out. But, you know, all of these things we've talked about with setting, they all come into play, okay? And the other story that we're reading for this week, certainly, well, actually, I think we have two other stories for this week. But all of them have to do with time period and place, and maybe even to some degree weather. You know, there's a whole lot of different things that go on these things. So that's what I want you to explore, okay? Now, for your video question for this week, and I meant to put this in the middle of the video rather than at the end, but anyway, for your video question this week, I want you to list at least 3 of the factors that are important in setting in fiction, okay? At least 3 of the factors. So email me that, and I'll get the rest of your stuff up there, and keep up the good work. You guys are doing great.